Welcome everyone to another exciting AMA here at Defi Raiders. I'm Degenik. I'm here with Relentless and Julian. We're thrilled to have the opportunity to speak with Shan Mugg from Stader Labs, Polygon. Um, First of all, we want to say thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to host you here. We're excited to learn about Stator and hear what y'all have been building. So with that, welcome Shan, and thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, DJ. Thanks, Shalom, and thanks, Relentless, for having me and Stader here. Interested and definitely excited to talk to your audience and community today.
Yeah, we appreciate it. So would you please go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your experience in blockchain and DeFi and your role on the Stator team?
Sure, DJ Nick. I lead business development and partnerships on Stader Polygon. I've been with Stader since the launch of the Stader liquid staking product on the Matic token. So that's been around 6 months now. And prior to this, I have extensive experience in technology startups in India, and I also have a management consulting background from the US, where I used to work with one of the large consulting companies. So donned a bunch of hats in my professional experience so far across tech startups and consulting, and this is my first foray in Web3 and crypto.
Oh, very cool. It's nice that we get a diversity of people. We get some people who have been doing crypto for 10 years, and then some others who are a lot newer to it.
Yeah.
So before we get into what Stator is and does, would you give us a little background on the team and the history of the project? How long have y'all been working together, and if you're able to speak to it a little bit, just how Stator survived the Terra collapse.
Sure, DJ Nick. And we've been around for a little more than 1.5 years. And interesting you bring that up. Terra was one of the first chains that we started building the liquid staking solution on. So our product Luna X was the liquid staking derivative token counterpart to Luna, and we were a much loved protocol on Terra. And at one point, at our peak, we had more than $1 billion in TVL on Terra alone, right? And consistently around $700 million in TVL on Terra in liquid staking. So while the vision for liquid staking was born on that chain, we always wanted to be a multi-chain platform right from day one. So we then expanded to other chains, including Polygon, Near, Phantom, Hedera, Terra 2.0 now, right? So we are present on 6 different blockchains right now, and we have a TVL of nearly $150 million. So while the crash did impact us, like everybody else must have said on this forum, the bear market is one of the best markets to build, and we are grateful to have the kind of committed founders we have between Sid, Amit, and Dheeraj, the three founders. They have extensive experience again in technology startups, in fintech startups, and in crypto. And it was their vision really to always be a multi-chain player. That has meant that we've been able to pick up the pieces and again start building again and go back from almost nothing to again be back to $150 million in TVL.
Oh, very cool. That's quite a recovery. Yeah, my introduction to Stator was with the Terra product, and yeah,
Gotcha.
that was quite rough, I assume, for everybody building on Terra.
Yeah.
Well, so cool. So now, before we get into the exciting stuff and talk about your products and the cool tech you guys are building, would you talk to us a bit about governance? I see on Twitter y'all just released a decentralization roadmap. Are you comfortable speaking to plans on that front?
Sure, Dijanik. I can give you a high-level overview. So while we did not start life as a DAO, being decentralized is still very important to us and our community. So starting with the first step in that process being creating a forum where users can and holders of the SD token can voice their opinion, give us feedback about our decisions and what they'd like to see as products. So listening to the community has always been on our minds. And while our Twitter and Telegram forums and Discord forums are one way to do that, a more formal process to do this is also through the Stater governance forum that we just launched last week. So that is step one. And very soon we also want to make a process of voting possible, become even more transparent than we are today, and share as much information as we can with the community about our plans for growth, our plans for partnerships, our plans for rewards and alpha, and our roadmap on the technology front, right? So those are all the interesting things that we want to share, that we are building today behind the scenes, so that the community gets a good sense of what's coming up. And we also want to be open and mindful of what the community expects from us as a liquid staking player, because we sincerely believe that liquid staking becomes an important Lego or DeFi primitive on almost all proof of stake chains. So we are also excited and eager to hear from the community of what they demand from us and what they expect of us.
Yeah, very, very cool, and nice. I mean, great to see more projects pushing further into decentralization. It seems like that's a place where we should all be innovating along with the tech.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, cool. Now let's get into the liquid staking products, and shall we start with the basics? You guys are on Polygon, Near, Phantom, Hedera, Terra 2, and one more chain.
BNB, yeah.
Oh, and BNB. Excellent,
Yeah.
excellent.
Yep. So I'm not sure if the audience is familiar with staking and liquid staking, or what do you suggest, Dejan? Should I start from like the basics?
Yeah, I think it's worth running through the basics. I think that's a nice story to tell for everybody.
Sure. And so I'll start with the basics. For those of us who are not familiar with the concept of staking itself, a proof of stake chain basically runs on a consensus mechanism, which is different from proof of work. And here, the stake is basically the amount that is staked by the validator to get the rights to validate transactions. And higher the stake, technically, higher are the probabilities of them being able to validate transactions, right? So the more the stake that a validator has, the more they will be able to validate transactions. And conversely, it also secures the chain a lot more, because there is more at stake for the validators, so they are less likely to act maliciously and also maintain good performance and ensure that the chain is decentralized and secure. So it works in two ways. One, when the stake is high, the validator is incentivized to uh, be even more cautious and be even more truthful as an actor in the ecosystem. And secondly, having a higher stake also means that there's more to lose, so the validator acts correctly, and in return, they are also rewarded by being able to validate a lot more transactions, so they get paid more in transaction fees. So it helps the getting more tokens staked is healthier for the chain, plus that it helps secure and decentralize the network, right? But now what that also does is locks up tokens. So if you wanted to support the decentralization ethos of your favorite proof of stake chain, for example, you could go ahead and stake your tokens. You would get staking rewards that the foundation or the trust that runs the chain can offer. But the problem is that that would end up locking up your tokens, and that would prevent you from exploring any of the DeFi elements that the chain now offers, right? And now we've seen trends where certain chains are better known for NFTs, some are better known for DeFi, some are better known for integrations with Web2 base players, etc. But you would miss out on all of those opportunities if all your tokens are just staked, and it's almost synonymous with locked at this stage. So that's where liquid staking comes in. And Stader's liquid staking tokens basically represent the value of tokens that you actually staked. So the closest analogy that I can think of in a real world financial instrument would be like a savings deposit or a fixed deposit that you would have with a physical bank. And let's say your money is logged in there, but if the bank gave you a universal receipt that you could take to anybody else in the world and say, hey, this shows that I have X amount of dollars or pounds saved with whoever the physical bank is. And if everybody in the world were to accept it as a proof of you having that money, then that receipt itself starts to act like currency, which means now you can get both the benefits of having the money with the bank, earn interest on it, and also be able to use it for other stuff like use it as collateral or swap it, or buy other things with it. So that's really the analogy that I like to use to compare liquid staking versus traditional staking. Here you get the benefits of both getting staking rewards from the validators and from the foundation, and at the same time be able to use a representative token, in this case let's say Matic X on the Polygon network, to engage in DeFi. And you could basically do anything and everything from investing in LPs, where the APYs could be, let's say, 13 to 14%, or you could use it as collateral on a lending platform like Aave and then borrow stable coins or Matic in return and loop it, right? So that's really how I'd describe liquid staking. It's like staking on steroids and also frees up your tokens.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So really, this expands the market opportunity for staking, right, by removing the core lock component of it. So I'm curious, has there been any impact on like number of validators on chains that you guys have rolled out to?
So by impact on number of validators, can you expand that a little bit more, Dejanic? Are you referring to, are more validators interested in joining, or has it reduced the number of validators? How do you think about the question?
Yeah, I'm curious if, if it has resulted in more validators joining, or if it only makes validators hold larger stacks fundamentally. And I'm thinking of like Phantom, a big concern over the couple of years has been that it only has, 40 or 50 validator nodes.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's an interesting question, and I feel like this is a little chain specific. And Polygon, for example, has an upper cap of 100 to 110 validators, right, at any given point in time, and they haven't announced any plans of expanding their validator set yet, I believe. But in other chains where it can be permissionless and you can add nodes, it definitely is an attractive economic opportunity still for users to come and set up their own validator nodes, right? So staking definitely incentivizes more validators to participate in chains that allow it, is my opinion. And secondly, one philosophy that we follow at Stader is in the principle of decentralization, to the extent that we try to stake with smaller validators who have the least amount of commissions and fees. So what we try to do is try and move the stake away from being concentrated in the hands of a few large validators and try and spread it to the long tail of validators, if you will, and try and keep it more balanced. And we always distribute user stakes across a curated set of 5 or 6 validators that we work with, and it's never to one validator.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense, right? So that's a meaningful contribution to security via right spreading out the validator pool more.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, nifty. That makes a lot of sense. So how about peg retention? I know I've been following the project for a long time, and I know the Stater's liquid staking tokens have all held peg exceptionally well. So how does that work, and what separates you from competitors on that front?
Sure. So we try to build large liquidity pools on all the chains that we operate in, especially for the liquid stake token versus the native asset pair, right? So be that SFTMX versus Phantom, or NearX versus Near, or Matic X versus Matic. So for example, on Matic, while our TVL is around $35 million, we already have around $21 million worth of LPs across Balancer, QuickSwap, and MeshSwap. So that means whenever there is a trade happening, we can support quite large sizes of trades. So, for example, on a $16 million LP in a Uni V3 model, you could easily support at least $8 million in a single transaction with less than 5% slippage, which is great. So we ensure that the deep liquidity will ensure that there is no price variation in the market price for even larger or significantly large trades. And secondly, even if there were to be a price delta, the arbitrage is very attractive in such a way that users can always, if let's say Matic X loses its peg and is basically trading cheaper than Matic, users can always go buy Matic X from the open market and then unstake with Stader, right? And then basically get Matic in return, get more Matic in return than what they paid for in the beginning. And this may not always play out, let's say, in some chains like ETH, for example, where the physical redemption of ETH is still not possible. But on Matic, the unbonding period is 3 days, right? And in other chains, other proof of stake chains, it's anywhere between 1 to 3 days. So what that means is the delta or the peg differential cannot last infinitely. It has to settle in 3 days. So if there's an arbitrage opportunity, all you got to do is either buy Matic X from Stader and then sell it on the open market to neutralize in one direction, or buy Matic X in the open market and unstake it with Stader for actual the fixed exchange rate back, right? So that's really how we are able to maintain the peg in two parts, right? One, deep liquidity in the chains we operate in, and second, the actual redemption possibility within X number of days, anywhere between 1 to 3 days, helps to ensure that it never stays deep peg too long.
Yeah, nifty. That makes a lot of sense. And cool that it's 1 to 3 days versus right, usually what, 14 to 28 for unstaking from a validator when it's even possible.
Yeah.
So good. I've got a couple more kind of general questions, and then I know then we'll get into the Polygon specific stuff that I know you're excited for.
Yeah, go for it. Shoot.
So how do you see Stater contributing to DeFi solving for more TradFi use cases?
So DeFi is solving for more TradFi use cases. So I would take that in one part, right? Firstly, the first part is what kind of DeFi primitives do we have now that are yet to completely capture the TradeFi gamut, right? We've had the basic building blocks of lending and borrowing, and we've had exchanges, and the more advanced concepts like options, like your covered call options or your put options, etc. They're the next wave of primitives, DeFi primitives coming up. And then you also have DeFi primitives like derivative products and synthetic products that are coming up, right? And the evolution of these products in DeFi are different to different degrees on different chains and protocols. But on Matic, we do see these coming up surely, right? And one of the things that we've also been interested in is being part of this journey where DeFi gets increasingly more sophisticated TradFi products implemented on chain. So, for example, we've partnered with a protocol called Delta Theta, which lets you sell covered call options denominated in Matic X, right? And also buy put options with Matic X as the asset. And we are soon to launch on a protocol called or a sell price, and does all of the heavy lifting for a user, and the user just has to think of it as a vault where they can deposit their Matic X, and the protocol will basically stake it and check for the strike price on the day of expiry and pay back the premium, etc., all of the good stuff. So that's one of the ways in which we try to help further TradFi getting into DeFi by working with protocols such as Delta Theta and Polysynth, which espouse those more sophisticated DeFi product, TradFi products, right? And secondly, we also believe some fundamental building blocks like lending and borrowing can enable more complex strategies on top, right? And now this is not strictly a traditional finance product as such, but a lot of strategies like going levered long or going short, etc. These are built on a basic block of being able to execute large volumes of trades and being able to borrow at cheap rates, right? And by being present on a lending platform like Aave, by being present in centralized exchanges and decentralized exchanges for swaps, we also enable those kind of more traditional financial strategies, if you will, to be executed using Matic X. So those are the two ways in which we believe we are part of this journey of more TradFi products coming into DeFi. One, working with protocols that actually implemented and simplified for users on chain, and also being present in all of the individual Lego block protocols that can enable these complex strategies to be executed in DeFi now. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Actually, I think and that was a great answer. I mean, that's exactly I think the right way to think about it is right as DeFi building blocks that enable ever more complicated strategies that ultimately that eventually, as you add enough of them together, start to look like derivatives products in TradFi.
Yeah, yep, yep.
So cool, and nice segue for us. So would you talk a little bit more about the Matic ecosystem that you guys have built in particular, and just kind of give us a list of who all you're partnered with and who's offering staking and the different ways that that users can engage.
Sure, Degenik. So we think of protocols in like three broad buckets, right? One would be your DEXs, where we maintain deep liquidity, and these are all incentivized. And depending on the DEX, you would generally get almost all of the rewards in their DEX token. For example, like Balancer, we have one of our largest liquidity pools there. You can provide liquidity to a Matic X LP there, and you can get rewards in Balancer tokens. On QuickSwap, you get your rewards in a combination of the Quick token and the SD token. And on MeshSwap, you get your rewards in the Mesh token and the SD token, right? So these are the large DEXs that we are present in. And these probably would be the three largest, besides Curve, I think, except Curve, these would be the three largest on Polygon. And then you talk about the lending protocols, right? We are present on OX, and we probably among the six or five or six largest tokens on OX right now. And that's been an amazing growth journey. They are a young protocol. They came up really quick, and they have some interesting things in the pipeline. So that's one lending partner we are active on. And then of course we are active on the largest protocol, the largest lending protocol out there. We are listed on Aave as collateral. So those are two places where we are listed as lending collateral. There's an interesting use case with My Finance, the guys who bring the My stablecoin. So you can use Matic X as collateral to mint the My stablecoin at a fixed borrow APY of 1% per year, right? And now that's a very interesting proposition, because anywhere else you go to borrow stablecoins, you'd still have a fluctuating borrow APY anywhere between 1 to 2.5%, depending on the stable you're talking about. But here you get to mint a stablecoin for 1% borrow APY and up to 70% LTV, which is also not very common for a volatile asset as collateral, right? So that's a very powerful integration we have when it comes to stablecoin minting. And then the third bucket of protocols is basically emerging newer DeFi primitives, which would include the options protocol like Delta Theta and Polysynth that we are going to live soon on, that we are going to launch soon on, right? I just wanted to add one thing, Dejanic. While these are the three broad buckets, all of them have very specific, interesting features that are unique to Matic X. So on the LPs, since Matic and Matic X move in the same direction when it comes to price, Matic X basically derives its price from Matic as a function of exchange rate, correct? So what that means is you can enjoy basically zero impermanent loss. Both the assets in the LP will either simultaneously increase in price or simultaneously decrease in price, God forbid, and by the same proportion. So that means zero impermanent loss. Users can just mint rewards for the assets that they're giving, and they get access, exposure to Matic price appreciation on both halves of the LP. So that's something that's very unique about a Matic X LP on any of the DEXs that you invest in, right? And secondly, when it comes to lending protocols, I was talking about integrations, specifically on Aave. We have something called as E mode enabled, which is now offered only on like Matic as a currency and on stable coins, right? So what that means is if you use Matic X as collateral and you want to borrow Matic against it, you can borrow up to 92% of the value of Matic X in Matic on Aave today, right? So now that's a very powerful unlock for a lot of strategies, because in no other combination would Aave let you borrow that high a percentage of LTV, right? And the good part about that is, even if you were to borrow 92%, your risk of liquidation is manageable, because if the value of Matic were to fall, the value of your collateral would fall by the same proportion or increase in the same proportion between Matic X and Matic. So your risk of liquidation is always at the same level, because the collateral and asset will move in the same direction. So that's the other unique aspect of using Matic X as collateral on a protocol like Aave.
Yeah,
Yeah, those were the two callouts that I wanted to make.
yeah, that's nifty. That's impressive capital efficiency. 70% on My and 92% on Aave is remarkable.
Yep. Yep. And it basically unlocks like very popular strategies like leverage staking. For example, if you could use Matic X as collateral, borrow more Matic, stake that again, get Matic X, lend it again, and you could do this loop till the cows come home. But unfortunately, the Matic borrow rates today may not allow for that. But we are trying to work with a protocol called Kian and try and automate this loop for users, and try and incentivize that with Stader tokens to make this loop happen and make this and get this going, right? eventually a strategy like this, which is immensely popular on the ETH side of the world, right? It definitely deserves to also be present in other chains, including Matic.
Yeah, nifty. That was going to be my next question. Is anybody working on automating these strategies? How do you spell their name? Kian?
Kian is Ciaan. Yeah.
Cool.
So they've implemented this precise strategy on a couple of other chains. So we've been in touch with them, and we should have something exciting to announce very, very soon. Yeah.
Oh, nifty. Yeah, that'll be super exciting. I love that I'm learning about all these protocols from you.
Our pleasure, our pleasure, and that's always been. I've always been fascinated by this ethos in Web3 and crypto. I'm still, I would still consider myself as junior in this space, but the spirit of partnership and fraternity that we've been host to, and that we've really enjoyed is eye opening. Unlike any other industry that I've worked in, it really is very exciting and very heartwarming to be connected through protocols, through connections, through conferences, and to be able to meet such amazing people building such crazy things halfway across the globe and be able to make it work so quickly. It's really testament to the community that Matic really has here, and I'm sure it's probably true of other chains also.
Yeah, that's very cool. And what has your approach been for finding new partners, finding these protocols? Are they finding you, or are you finding them?
So I think it cuts both ways. So there are definitely OG protocols that have stood the test of time and are definitely important for an interesting DeFi partnership to happen, right? So there have definitely been instances where we've approached them, and the other way around, we are definitely one of the emerging and fastest growing protocols on the Matic ecosystem. So we do also get a lot of inbound interest from other protocols who want to work together, right? And we always try and evaluate what is the strength of the community with these protocols, and would it make sense for our user base? Would it make DeFi more capital efficient if we were to execute the strategy? Are the protocols audited and safe and secure, right? Once you pass that set of filters, then it's pretty smooth sailing from that point on.
Yeah, makes sense. And agree. I mean, it's amazing how accessible most people are in DeFi, most teams and projects and so forth.
Yeah.
So cool. And speaking of security, I understand you have a bug bounty program with ImmuneFi and also live monitoring with Forta. Could you talk a little bit about those programs and how successful they've been thus far?
Sure. Thanks for asking, Djanik. And security is definitely very important to everything we do, like it is for most DeFi protocols. And smart contracts are twice audited by two independent security firms, Halborn and ImmuneBytes, on the Matic smart contract. And when it comes to the bug bounty, we've been running a $1 million bug bounty on Immunify since April. And thankfully, we've not had any claims on the bounty yet. So that's a good sign. But we obviously want to encourage anybody to find flaws in the system in the most ethical manner possible and apprises. And that's the need that the bug bounty serves. And secondly, we're super interested in also talking about the integration with Forta. So Forta is a protocol that has these monitoring bots running 24/7 on chain, and it basically monitors for any malicious activity on the chain. So anytime you see a large staking action or an unstaking action, or the exchange rate between Matic X and Matic deviate beyond a certain point, and there are a few other measures that we put in terms of monitoring the health of the smart contract. Any of these go off back, there will be an alert issued to certain members of the team who can then look into it and try and address it. So that's really the advantage that Forta offers. And while we know that crypto never sleeps, but humans have to. So the Forta is a nice way for us to have a pair of eyes when we are not looking and make sure that it can alert us if the need be.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's right. Speed of finding out something has gone wrong is clearly a, a big deal.
Yeah, yeah.
So cool. So then let's talk a little bit about, if you can, about what's upcoming. Anything, any upcoming features that you're able to talk about, or or product launches or new chains or anything like that.
Among launches on chains, unfortunately, I cannot disclose more at the moment. I can only say that we will definitely launch in at least two more chains before the end of the year, and possibly three chains before the end of the year. So fingers crossed on that. And in terms of the DeFi integrations that we have with Polygon, while we partnered with most of the large ones, I feel like we also want to explore opportunities where we can automate complex strategies for users. We feel that is the next evolution of DeFi, while it's still catering to a large, cohort of sophisticated users who understand these protocols well and understand the risks well. We do feel that there is a space that exists which can help simplify these strategies and encapsulate them in easier to use vaults. So that's the direction in which we would like to work on. So Kian, for example, automates a very popular strategy. Polysynth that I spoke about tries to automate this process of buying and selling options and abstracts away the complexity of deciding a strike price, right? So you can expect more announcements in that direction where we try and make users' lives more simpler by partnering with protocols that automate strategies.
Yeah, very cool. We've been talking to a number of protocols in that area. It seems like there's a ton of stuff developing in like running a crab strategy or running a grid strategy or what have you, right? Enabling people to take positions that are relatively market neutral seems to be the thing of the moment.
Absolutely, and I feel like it's a very natural evolution of DeFi in general, right? You have the basic blocks first, then once the proof of concept is established and there is demonstrated product market fit for certain types of strategies, the next logical step becomes automating it, right? And I feel there will be an evolution even post that. It should be more advisory in nature and try and pair users with the kind of risk appetites they have and make discovery more easier, right? And this will probably be a chain of evolution like we've seen in the Web2 space. So this is following the natural course of events, I would say.
And that's a great point. I mean, so do you see Stater as having a role in helping to onboard, and it could be users or it could be institutions, and helping them discover the ecosystem?
Yep. So we try and do that to the best of our abilities. So, for example, we have a DeFi page, right, on our DApp. So after users stake their tokens, they can always explore a DeFi page which has a list of all the partnerships we have. So that's our way of trying to give visibility to our partner protocols and showcase them on our DApp, right? That's one way we try and create visibility. Of course, our marketing channels are always running, and we try and share the spotlight with our partners wherever possible and ensure our community discovers those partners either through AMAs or marketing or through forums like yours.
Yeah, very cool. Makes a lot of sense. So Julian asks, and this is kind of a history question, but because I assume it's easy now that you guys are a large and well-known protocol, but how in the earlier days did you manage to get support from all these big name projects? Uh, what was that like?
So I guess no one really likes to talk about the days when you're knocking on somebody's door on a Telegram group and you get no answers for weeks and years. But jokes aside, we've generally been welcomed on most conversations. The Polygon Foundation in particular, has been extremely helpful in that regard. There's a Polygon builders community also that we have access to, that we are able to discover protocols mutually. They are able to discover us and we are able to find them. And after that, it's generally the comfort that we discover by having a mutual connect or a contact who's used our products and who's generally been gracious enough to put in a word for us and make that process easier. So I would say, like, the first three or four protocols were harder for us to convert because we were relatively unknown. right? But after you do a couple of those and users see that you're stable and users acknowledge your security practices and the community that you're trying to build, it makes the conversation a lot easier from, let's say, the third or the fourth conversation that you're trying to have in that regard. And in all of our conversations, a common theme has been, how do we make each other successful? What does it mean in terms of community? What does it mean in terms of the problem we are solving? What does this mean in terms of a use case? What does this mean in terms of TVL for the respective protocols, right? So when we feel like it's a win-win in all of those boxes, it's also easier to make the other person interested in this partnership.
Yeah, great answer. And I ask stuff like this because I think it's worth reminding, our listeners, right, that you didn't spring fully formed as as a $500 million protocol, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
everybody
it's
has
it's
to go through the not the beating down doors phase for a while.
yeah. But I feel like it's becoming easier more and more. I see this because if everybody is interconnected in some way or the other, and there are enough interesting use cases and protocols out there that want to be synced up, right? And I've always maintained that that is the beauty of DeFi that you cannot replicate in TradFi. The pace at which you can integrate and the variety with which you can integrate. You'd be stuck in a rigmarole of endless reviews before you ever got integrated in the real world if you're trying to engineer a partnership, right, between two very different entities. So I'm definitely seeing this as a reflection of the future and what a boundaryless world can look like, the rate at which these partnerships happen now.
Yeah, very cool. And I've heard before that one of the big inducements to build on Matic has been the foundation and what a good job they do helping and connecting protocols, with others and so forth. Could you speak to that a little bit, or, whether you want to relate it to another chain or not?
So I'd probably not be best placed to comment about other chains, but from my personal experience of working with the guys from the Polygon Foundation, they've been super helpful in making connections and introductions for us, right? And we've been able to quickly establish a common group or chat where we've been able to take the conversation further. And they've also been helpful in other regards, such as common hiring events that they conduct, where they try to find talent in specifically with blockchain skill sets for all protocols on Polygon that are interested in hiring, for example. And in terms of new technological innovations that they're coming up with, ZK EVMs or others, making it available, making the tech literature available for protocols early on, getting feedback. So they've definitely done a great job of engaging with the builder community and making it easier for them to discover each other and also discover talent to onboard. So those things I feel are some that make the foundation really stand out on this chain.
Yeah, that's very cool. Centralizing hiring like that sounds like a huge advantage because that's got. I mean, I know hiring is brutal in Web 2, so I can
Yeah.
only imagine here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's a very similar talent pool that everybody is competing to hire as well. So I also feel from a candidate standpoint, them being able to participate in a Polygon blockchain job fair and get like 6 different calls for roles and them having the liberty to then discuss individually and choose, etc. I also feel like it makes a great candidate experience.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because, right, I assume all the job postings are basically, we're looking for a Web 3 dev.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and that's one interesting thing. Like I've received so many direct inbound requests on Discord, especially, and I've had some very interesting conversations with folks who are eager to learn more about your protocol and to actually have a conversation around what they bring to the table and what their diverse and rich past experiences, which is again a very interesting way of building and hiring, which is slightly offbeat from the traditional Web 2 world.
Yeah, that's very cool. Right. So Relentless asks, what talks have y'all been having as a team about preparing for possible regulation in the crypto space? What are your major concerns there?
So, in terms of regulations, I would say we've typically followed the guidelines that have been established by the chain that we operate on. So, what applies to them is what really applies to us, is what we believe. So, if unless there is a uh, cut and dried regulation which says that you cannot for sure act as a securities player in this country, or you cannot be domained or domiciled in this country. Of course, we do take care of that. But beyond that, for the inevitables, I don't think we've really planned for contingencies in that sense. We are always on the lookout for what are these kind of movements that are happening, and whether there are likely to be any regulatory impact on the chains themselves that we operate in. Otherwise, I don't think that is one theme that features prominently in our growth aspirations or the kind of problems that we want to solve for users.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because yeah, it's all a little too early to start guessing at.
Yeah. It would become difficult to build with those constraints in mind and prepare for that eventuality, and hence build a constrained or suboptimal product today versus being able to tackle it when it were to land, right? And I also feel like it will never be a unilateral decision to react to a regulation in one way or the other. It would always be a community led response, which would basically reflect how a lot of protocols together want to respond in the spirit of building in Web3. So I believe it would always be a community decision across protocols if something important or major were to come our way.
Now, that would be wonderful if all the big protocols get together and make the same decision when that eventuality happens. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm also curious to hear from you guys. I've also received this question on regulations, etc., on a couple of different forums, and I'm sure it plays on us to different degrees depending on where we live, what's our media, and the extent to which we are close to the topic. I'm curious to know what are your thoughts on, and what have you been hearing on the regulation piece?
Boy, good question. I mean, I'm in the U.S., so the U.S. is still making noises about doing something or other, but it hasn't yet been defined other than the FTC and the CFTC kind of fighting over jurisdiction, or rather the SEC and the CF and the commodities futures trading board, fighting over jurisdiction. So that so whether and to what extent, right, cryptos are securities versus commodities. Like, yeah, most of them are securities from my, in my opinion. Can we get to the point where we make that regulatory regime, where we innovate that regulatory regime, right, in a way that it doesn't cripple the space without just pretending like it's never going to happen. And then I
Mm,
think on the other front, I'm really interested in in new, uh, in modes of organization that support the structures that we have adopted in DeFi, right? So a DAO aligns most closely with a co-op of the business
mm.
structures that exist, right? And yet I'm not aware of any projects that have incorporated as a co-op.
Yeah. The day they meet a $1 billion co-op is the day when they'll have questions, I guess.
Right. I mean, it's all super fraught because yeah, there's no, there's not a good model for that even in TradFi or
Yeah.
in traditional governance.
Mm.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
and obviously we've seen sporadic incidents of uh, people being charged, people being arrested, and then being held liable for the code they wrote, etc. Right? These are all important moments in the history of DeFi, and that people will probably look back on. And I feel like these are not really indicative of what direction it might go to, but just a gentle reminder of what can happen and what can go wrong. Right? It's not out of the realm of possibility that these things can happen. So I guess engaging with regulators in some senses, at least some centralized exchanges seem to be more proactive in terms of engaging with regulators, partially because their business depends very heavily on that. But maybe at a chain level, foundations can potentially be actively involved. Maybe they are behind the scenes and help educate.
Yeah, I think that would be wonderful. I very much think that like as the DeFi community or the crypto community, we need to be innovating in structures, not just methods of governance, right?
Mm. Yeah, I feel like we are on the forefront in terms of transparency when it comes to on-chain data, but then making sure accountability and governance also exists is going to be the next level of evolution, and potentially marrying it with existing familiar traditional structures and drawing a comparable like a co-op, for example, like you mentioned, and making that analogous and easier for regulators to understand and absorb is going to be important. It's just going to be driving awareness education for the next few years, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. I mean, and hopefully we can kind of get out ahead of it because like boy does blockchain offer the potential to solve for some of the criminality that's in TradFi.
Yeah.
Right? That
Yeah.
exists between huge investment banks and family offices, right? The stuff going down with the Swiss investment firm right now.
Yeah.
These things like if those were all known, if all those transactions were simply known and public, that stuff would
Yeah.
never happen.
Yeah, and I try to explain to my friends in Web 2, and they still can't believe that level of transparency is possible or is encouraged. So I feel like it's a little bit of a culture shock for them also when we talk about like transparency front and center and being decentralized. But very soon enough, I guess everybody embraces it once they see the advantages of doing that and what it means for the group or the community or society at large.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I also have a management consulting background and have spent a bunch of time, with huge companies. And I would argue that past a certain size, you only get more and more inefficient, and you only get more and more opaque, right? And by design.
Yep, yep, amen to that.
So yeah, so a lot of potential. I do hope that the community will engage with the regulators and will get out in front of it so that it's not them imposing it. It's collaborative.
Yeah, yeah. I think you put it very well. Like being ahead of it is going to be important in this one. If you are forced to react to it, you will probably not be able to control a very important piece of the narrative. So, I guess being ahead of it and being vocal and educating users. I think Coinbase came up with one interesting feature where they could show users who their representatives were, what were their crypto interests, and were they pro crypto or anti crypto, etc. I thought that was a really cool feature that they built on into their app and try and foster dialogue between people in public office and users through a medium.
Oh, that's a great move, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, nifty. Well, cool. Well, that was a fascinating segue. So now why don't we return to more directly to Stater? So I think kind of my last question is really do you have any upcoming partnerships, marketing initiatives, community initiatives that you'd like to share with us?
So we are always looking forward to hearing from our community members. We launched a program recently called Stader Alpha Insider, and it's basically an initiative for us to get volunteers to give us feedback about the partnerships that we build and the product features that we release on our DApp. And there's nothing like hearing firsthand from users. We welcome the opportunity to get into deep conversations and get as much feedback as possible, and that will definitely reflect in the products that we ship, right? So that's one way where we want to structure the way in which we collect user feedback and loop it into product design and product building. So that really is our first step towards engaging with the community. In terms of more traditional ambassador type programs or community outreach programs, we are still internally discussing how and what that might look like. So unfortunately, I don't have more news to share on that, but I'll make sure to drop the link on the Alpha Insider program so that interested members can give us feedback. And of course, yeah, forgot to mention there will also be a small monetary benefit for their contribution.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it is. It's great. It's great how easy it is to do user research like that in this space.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Well, good. Any does anybody in the audience have any questions? Raise your hand if you'd like to come up on stage, or type into AMA questions. Going once. Yeah, and that's all. That's been all of my questions. So thank you so much, Shanmug. This has been just fascinating. And do you have any closing remarks?
Nope, nope, DJ Nick. It was great chatting with you and the team here. Would be happy to answer any questions in the future as well if folks have for me about Stader or anything else that we do on Matic or on the other chains. We can give you the links to our socials and our communities and to the DApp so that users can come check us out and talk to us.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, please do drop some links into general chat or AMA questions as you prefer. And yeah, it looks like a lot of, or really a lot of ways for users to engage with Stater, both as an investment and as a community. So very cool.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, well, good. All right, everyone. This has been amazing. Thanks so much, Shanmug, from the Stater Polygon team for taking the time to speak with us and let us learn from him. We're very grateful to have had the opportunity, and we're excited to see the progression of everything y'all are doing. We'll be uploading this to YouTube if anybody wants to hear it again. If you're hearing it on YouTube right now for the first time, please like and subscribe. We've got a lot more coming, including many more AMAs even this week.